different types of roles within electrical. If you study electrical, I mean, you can go into power, you can go to like signal processing, you can go into electronics, you can go into instrumentation and controls. There's a ton of different fields. You can go into facilities engineering on the electrical side. So this person says chemical engineering is the best. Chemical engineering, in general, tends to pay fairly well. Okay, let's see. Chemical engineering tends to pay fairly well. And if you're thinking about studying chemical engineering is not necessarily the major that will lead you, in many cases, to working in a lab. So mixing chemicals. A lot of what chemical engineers do is basically work on, in a nutshell, at a very simplified level, work on the process that is responsible for creating chemical products. So the example I gave before was like dish soap. Your dish soap, a chemist, probably scientists worked in a lab to develop the soap. They figured out how it works. And then the chemical engineers are the ones that work on more of the plant and manufacturing side of things. Like what does our production volume look like for today? Like a chemical engineer might be working in the manufacturing plant that produces the dish soap and knows like, oh, what the temperature range should be in this boiler, or what the flow rate should be through this pipe as we mix these different chemicals together. So the chemical engineering in general tends to align with plants, like manufacturing plants for basically ensuring the chemical reactions are occurring at a large scale in sort of the way that they should. I'm trying to say this in a simplified manner that a lot of people would understand. But do you mean your biomed and consider switching to EMI? You would delay graduation by a year. Delaying graduation by a year, that's a tough choice. Why are you thinking of switching to EMI? It seems like, I'm not sure if I read this right, but it seems like you're interested in biomed and you're thinking of mechanical. Why would you consider that switch? Are you no longer interested in biomed? Because mechanical will definitely have maybe some broader opportunities, at least to start, but possibly when you start. But let me know why you're thinking of switching. You study electrical. Why do the MBA instead of master's in engineering? Just broaden my skill set in a different way. Would research with professor be good for EE internship on your resume? Yeah, so basically if you are wanting a solid internship, so let's work backwards. You study engineering, you probably want a really good job after you graduate, right? I'll tell you, for me, that's what my end goal when I was in school was. Basically, for me, when I was a freshman, I did the money calculation, and I figured that at the end of the 4 years, I'd have like $100,000 of student loans, and I thought, geez, I'm gonna have to have a good job to be able to pay all this off. And then so all of a sudden, everything I did was like, how do I set myself up the best I can to get a good job after graduation? So if, let's say, that good job is the end goal, right? The best thing you can probably get on your resume for getting a good job is going to be internship experience. So internship experience, if you want to go into industry, is like the gold standard. And then next, one thing that you would basically be like research or clubs and student orgs on campus. So if you can get involved in any of those, that would then be probably the next best thing if you're trying to go into industry. And the thing is with which one's better, it kind of depends on the experience itself and how hands-on you're getting with the experience. But overall, I would say yes, research could be a pretty valuable experience on your resume. For me, freshman year, I was involved in like research, and it was during the second semester freshman year. So I didn't have any connections to get my internships. Basically, the ways I got my internships were through either applying online, on-campus career fairs, or networking. And when it came to actually getting my first internship, The very first offer I ever received was at the fall career fair of freshman year. So that's when I received the first offer that I ever got. Long story short, I can go into this more, but I don't want to keep chewing up time because I'm already like 55 comments behind. Long story short, ended up turning that offer down, but then struggled for a long time to get another interview. And then through applying online, I got the John Deere internship. I was invited to interview. And at that point on my resume, I did have research experience. So yeah, research experience could be useful if you're looking for an internship. You're finishing your second year, but losing interest due to lack of hands-on. So, what engineering are you thinking of? Are you thinking of going into? Because usually the first and second year tends to be a little bit more general, and then you get more specific. If you're losing interest due to lack of being able to do things with your hands, maybe try to look at what your next couple semesters would look like, especially in electrical engineering. Once I got past like those first 3-4 semesters, you then start to get some pretty hands-on lab work. So for me, it was like I had a lab that was in power. I believe another one in digital logic, another one for embedded systems, and then I think another circuits lab, and then possibly another circuits lab. So like I probably had like 3 to 5 lab classes I had to do, and those are definitely a lot more hands-on work. And then there's definitely some classes that tend to be more project work, but I would say I wouldn't totally lose hope. And there definitely are jobs that you can get with an engineering degree that are more hands-on. So if you want to go into engineering, you can get a mix of jobs after you graduate. You can get jobs where like you're on your feet all day, moving around, putting out metaphorical fires. You can get jobs where you spend most of your day behind a desk at a computer. And then there's other ones you could get that tend to be more in a lab and are very hands-on. So I wouldn't lose hope quite yet. I'd look at those next couple semesters and see what types of classes you'll be taking soon. Vanderbilt for engineering, thinking of EE, but want to go towards health applications. So why are you thinking about EE? I would say with like those broader engineering majors like mechanical, electrical, chemical, there's roles within pretty much in almost like every industry for those different engineering disciplines. So whether you're in mechanical, chemical, electrical, you could find a position within almost any industry that aligns with your major. So for example, let's talk about, you said you're interested in health applications. Let's say you study mechanical. Well, maybe you can apply that degree towards designing medical devices, right? Let's say you study electrical engineering. Well, aren't there medical devices that require electronic components, right? So that's the application of EE. Or let's say maybe you study EE, but you're not interested in electronics, and maybe you're interested in power. You might think this is where you have to get creative. So even if you're not specifically like interested in this scenario that this person commented, just listen to the way I'm thinking here. You're saying you're thinking of EE, but you want to go towards health applications. I said, well, if you study mechanical, maybe you can get a job designing medical devices. If you study EE, maybe you can get a job working on electronics within medical devices, right? Or what if you don't like electronics, but you like power distribution, and which is basically, I don't want to go too into the details, but let's say you like power distribution and you're thinking, well, how do I apply that to health? Well, could you work as a facilities engineer, an electrical facilities engineer at a manufacturing plant that produces medical devices, right? So you're getting creative in the types of jobs that are within a specific industry that you could go into with your degree. So another one could be chemical engineering, right? So I even said chemical engineering. You could find there's lots of different industries. Even like health applications, like you said, require chemical engineering. Well, what about pharmaceuticals? Think about how pharmaceuticals are manufactured. They're manufactured in manufacturing plants. Chemical engineering is required for that. So basically what I'm trying to get at is, whether whether you study mechanical, chemical, electrical, a lot of those industrial, a lot of those broad engineering disciplines, there's a lot of opportunities in a ton of different industries for you. Is CNC machining good? So this is kind of a broad question. I guess good for what? Are you talking about like as a skill to develop? What I think is really interesting is when I work with students and I see their resumes, I think it's really cool when they have like experience on campus. For example, they're part of like a rocketry team or a space team on campus, and they have like CNC machining experience, because that type of experience and knowledge is very practical to industry depending on what you eventually go into. So I think it could be valuable to know how to have experience with CNC machining, but that all depends though on what you're trying to go into, because some jobs it's relatable, other jobs not really. I could see data centers are definitely sort of popping up all over the place right now, and I'll comment on that in a sec. When you think about data centers, you're building data centers, right? This is another example of what I was just talking about. Think about a data center. All of the engineering disciplines that go into data centers. Think about that. You have buildings being constructed, civil engineering. There's mechanical engineering in that as well. There's also electrical engineering. You have not just like with the data centers, you don't just have electrical engineering involved in like the actual equipment, the data side of things. You have electrical engineering involved in basically how do we power these data centers? How do we distribute power throughout the data center? You have chemical engineering more than likely involved. Mechanical facilities engineering, when you're talking about like heating and cooling systems, like HVAC systems. Like so the point is that, again, no matter what you kind of want to go into, there's likely engineers from multiple whatever industry, there's likely multiple engineering disciplines involved in that industry. Let's see. What do you think about research industry that requires a PhD? I would say that if you want to go into that, it really depends on if you want to go into something that technical, and if you're willing to be in school for that long. That's at least the first two things that come to my mind. Now, that said, that's not necessarily my cup of tea, but if that's what floats your boat, awesome, more power to you. I think I'm always for do what aligns well with your goals and what you're interested in. If you want to get a PhD and do research, I think that's awesome. Always, like, even when it comes to like choosing your major, don't choose the wrong major for the wrong reasons. My brother, he was intending to study electrical, So I studied electrical. My brother was intending to study electrical, but then ended up switching over to industrial engineering. And as you probably know, electrical is considered, I'm not going to say electrical is the hardest, even though a lot of people do consider it. Usually people will say like chemical or electrical, but I think it's kind of a moot point, because I think all of the engineerings are hard. Like, what does it matter that like chemical or electrical is the hardest engineering when they're basically all super hard? But my point is that my brother was intending to study electrical, and which is considered one of the hardest, and then ended up kind of switching over to industrial engineering, and which is considered one of the easiest. Now, that said, he had a ton of success there, more so than a lot of other students. So that said, my advice is really just do what aligns well with your goals and your interests. If industrial, electrical, mechanical, getting a master's, getting a PhD, whatever aligns well with your long-term goals, I really think that's something to take into consideration. Yes, and I am about 100 questions behind. It's about 12:13 p.m. Central Time on Friday, May 30th. So yes, this is live. I'll say that again. It's about 12:13 p.m. Central Time on Friday, May 30th. So yeah, this is live. I'm just about like 100 plus questions behind. All it tells me is that I'm 99 plus questions behind, and I'm behind. It's been like that for a couple minutes now. You think petroleum engineers make the most of any engineering discipline? So this is an interesting point. And why would petroleum engineering come up as one of the highest paid? Well, the thing is that has to do with industry, right? Oil and gas has historically paid very well as an industry, but the thing is though, other majors can still capitalize on that. So why do petroleum engineering students tend to have high salaries after graduation? Well, it's because they go into the oil and gas industry, right? Well, if you look at like any of the other majors, mechanical, chemical, electrical, if they then go work in the oil and gas industry, they then will have more likely have salaries higher than their peers. So because they're going into an industry that pays well. And so this isn't to say, oh, go into a specific industry if you want to make a lot of money. I'm just stating that the industry is involved and sort of like is part of why some industries tend to pay more than other industries. You have basic coding classes, but you really don't like coding. Okay. Have you thought about what type of work that you are interested in doing? Electrical controls engineer. Cool. Yeah, controls. I think controls is a really cool field. Studying nuclear with a concentration of power. Are you going to make? If you make money post grad, I guess that depends on if you get a job. Any tips for a mechanical engineering intern? Yeah. So if you're working an internship, I honestly, I think I would say. You might be saying, give me tips aside from the basic stuff. Well, I would say the basic stuff is what matters. Good hygiene, showing up on time. As simple as that all sounds, that's if you have to nail the basics right. Being respectful, things like that. Doing a good job on what I guess you're supposed to do. So another thing too, if you're working an internship, don't try to avoid like slang unless it's I guess maybe common where you're working. So for example, if you are working in an office with a bunch of and everybody else, if you're working in an office for an internship and everybody else is say 40 years old, right? And you're talking to your manager about how you studied computer science or want to do computer science freshman year, and now you're in mechanical, and now you're working a mechanical engineering internship, and you're talking about that with your manager. You probably don't want to say during that conversation, oh, CS is now like completely cooked, right? You don't want to say they're not going to get what cooked means. Probably you don't want to like use slang like that with your team during an internship. Like try to stay professional and get the basic things right. Or you don't want to send like they might not understand like the dead rose emoji or things like that, like that type of stuff. The type of stuff you see on TikTok. If you start entering that in like the team chat and messages, they may not totally get that. So you kind of want to, in your internships, a general piece of advice is avoid slang. Systems and test engineer with how to learn coding. I guess what is your goal? What is the end goal? Thoughts on mechanical? I think mechanical engineering is great because it's pretty broad. It gives you a lot of different options. Another thing though is electrical is a very, very broad field. Like I was saying earlier in the live, if you study electrical, if you are in like one of the large engineerings like mechanical, civil, electrical, chemical, almost any industry, you could find a position in it because almost any industry has at somewhere requires that knowledge. Now, Cats by 90, yes. So yeah, I would say mechanical engineering is a very broad field, and it gives you a lot of different options. Oh, but what I was going to say is that electrical is very broad as well. Electrical is broad in the sense that what I just said, lots of different industries. have opportunities for electrical. But then on the other hand, electrical has a lot of different sort of subspecialties, so that you could go into controls, you can go into signal processing, you could go into power, you can go into electronics, you can go into more computer hardware, semiconductors. There's so many different subspecialties within electrical that is another aspect of it being a generally broad major. Okay, so I'm really far behind. It's about 12:19 p.m. Central Time on Friday, May 30th, and I've been about like 100 questions behind for a couple minutes now. So I'm gonna race through these, skedaddle through them pretty quickly. I just got it jumped down to the most recent question. I lost kind of where I was. Oh wow, no way. So okay, so this is crazy. So okay, let me just tell you all. I'm gonna jump off of the engineering topic for a second and tell you all what just happened. So basically, this is live. It's not like a pre-recording. It's at 12:20 p.m. on Friday, Central Time, on Friday, May 30th. So this is live. And so what it tells me on the feed is like right now I'm 21 questions behind. But I was about 100 questions behind, or 100. It's 90. I was 99 plus messages. It says 99 plus new messages is what it was saying. And it was saying that for like a couple minutes as I was talking. And then when I tried to scroll down, it accidentally scrolled all the way to the bottom. And now I scrolled all the way to the top of the questions, and I can't even see where I was. There were so many questions or comments here. So we're going to see. My son is applying to undergraduate engineering, or UG engineering, probably top undergrad engineering, probably top 20. Is there a big difference for job opportunities, top 10 versus top 30? Yeah, so that's a really good question. What I would say is that when you look at the engineering school rankings, I think what really matters more is the student. And that's why you see, situations where a student at a top 10, even top 5 ranked engineering school struggles to get an internship all 4 years, versus versus maybe a student at a lesser ranked school getting phenomenal internships, because of course, there's plenty of opportunities at many of the highly ranked engineering schools, like companies going on campus, maybe research opportunities. But that said, at the end of the day, it's really up to the student and how well the student takes advantage of the opportunity. So when students ask like say I don't go to a good enough ranked school, I think it's all up to the student. A lot of it's up to the student and how you take advantage of the opportunities that are available to you. Because again, I see it. I see students at lower ranked engineering schools get absolutely phenomenal internships and phenomenal job opportunities. And then you see students at top ranked schools struggle to get internships. And now, of course, there's students also at top ranked schools that get amazing internships. And then students at lesser ranked schools that struggle to get internships. So at the end of the day, when you look at all the different cases that are happening, there's, of course, plenty of benefits of going to a top-ranked engineering school, like maybe research opportunities, facilities, and companies showing up on campus. But that said, I think a lot of it is up to the student and how well the student takes advantage of the opportunities. Because if you have all the opportunity available to you, but you're not taking advantage of it, what's the opportunity even mean, right? So that's personally what I saw. And again, I would say at all of my internships, I met students from all different types of schools. Top ranked schools. I've probably met students from throughout the course of all my internships, probably nearly all, if not all, of the top 10 ranked engineering schools. So, but also I've met students at all of my internships, from schools much lower in the rankings, and even at many of my internships from schools I hadn't heard of. So the point is that, and to wrap up this point, I think the student matters more than the school. But that said, of course, there's plenty of benefits of going to a highly ranked engineering school, like facilities, research opportunities, companies going on campus for recruiting, things like that. So I definitely don't want to discount that. But at the end of the day, I think it's a lot of your success when you're in school is up to you, the student. What about biomedical engineering internships? What do you want to go into for biomedical? Like what areas within biomedical or I guess healthcare interest you? Ba, 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 ba. I no longer have nightmares about studying engineering. How did you decide what type of engineering to study? You're currently undecided at MSU. So, it's a good question. I would say what's important is that you decide your major based on what aligns well with your goals and your interests. And I have two stories. Number one is, so for me, how I decided was I took the AP Physics C class in high school and took the electricity and magnetism class, right? And after that, I fell in love with the topics, thought I got to learn more about this. And that's how I was sort of pushed into electrical. I decided to go into electrical. And so it was basically just pursuing what I thought was interesting. For my brother, he was initially intending to study electrical, right? And then realized that actually it's industrial engineering that aligns a lot more with my goals than electrical, because he just wasn't too into the topics taught in electrical. And so he ended up going into industrial actually, and was very, very successful throughout his degree there. He was very, very successful with that. So my point here is if you're trying to decide what engineering, definitely I would say definitely consider which one aligns well with your goals and your long-term interests, things like that. Best engineering for job stability. There's, I think a lot of the engineerings. I mean, it all kind of depends in terms of like stability. Like stability, the thing about stability is that you have like, of course, there's just there's national job market trends, but then you also have more like regional trends and even trends within industries. So that's kind of a hard one to pinpoint. What jobs do chemical engineers get? Yeah, so chemical engineering can open up a lot of different opportunities. What I would say with chemical engineering, a lot of chemical engineering students tend to go into like working in manufacturing plants, basically. So like chemical plants, though. So let's talk about an example I like to give is dish soap, right? The chemists, the people in R&D basically developed a dish soap, right? Well, the chemical engineer works in the plant and this is just one example. There's lots of different opportunities for chemical engineers, but to give you a sense of chemical engineering, a lot of chemical engineering students will go into the job where they work at the manufacturing plant or the chemical plant that produces the dish soap at a large volume. So they're working on so maybe in the lab they're concerned about like how do we produce this bottle of soap, right? Well, the chemical engineer is at the manufacturing plant level is concerned about how do we produce the next 1,000 gallons of this dish soap, right? And so the types of things they're involved with is like they're more on they're less involved in like exactly what chemicals need to be mixed to make the dish soap versus what is the temperature of this drum in our plant or like what should the flow rate be through this pipe, or what should the temperature be of the chemical in this part of the process. I'm trying to explain it in a way that doesn't go into too much detail that is confusing, but basically the point is chemical engineering tends to be involved in manufacturing of the basically chemicals at a large scale at like chemical plants or manufacturing plants. You did an internship with Marathon this past spring and I'm doing summer and fall. Where should you go next? I would say it depends on your interests. I would say it depends Depends on your interests. Some students move around from company to company. Others stick with the same company, and it really doesn't. No, I don't think one path is better than the other. So for me, when I skipped around, I had the opportunity to return after my internships, and just the way things were, I ended up jumping around between internships, even though I could have returned. And the benefit of that for me was just being able to explore different industries, check out the different companies, check out different types of work, because during all of my internships, I really didn't, they all had different responsibilities. A lot of them were not really the too similar. So that gave me a good taste of different types of work and sort of showed me what I would be interested in doing after graduation. Now that said, some students might work at an internship at a company and return summer after summer after summer, and the benefit of that is you get really familiar with the company and the type of work and even like the people, and so that could be super helpful if you like the company and you end up and you think like you want to return there full time. That could help you when you start full time. Like you already are probably past a large portion of the learning curve that students who are joining the company for the first time have to go through, and that could help you hit the ground running a lot faster when you start that full-time job. Going into chemical engineering, but you're terrified but curious. I would say you'll probably it'll be challenging, but if you like engineering, I think you might like it. And yes, now I'm back to 99 plus new messages. And yes, it is live Friday, May 30th, 12:30 p.m. Central Time. Okay, I'm going to race through these questions. How hard would you say the work is in college versus the actual job? So that's a good question. I would say it depends. It depends on the job that you get after graduation. But I would say probably a lot of students do experience it being a little bit easier. I wouldn't say easier. It's just after graduation more manageable than being in school, because think about it like this. Generally, it's not like you're working weekends when you have a job. You're pretty much, if you clock in, clock out 9 to 5, right? That's when you work. Versus when you're in school, if you have a test coming up, you're studying on the weekends, right? If you have a test coming up, you're studying through dinner, right? Versus when you're working, it's a little bit more structured when you're working. So students find it to be, I would say a lot of students probably find it to be a little bit easier after graduation. How was the first 2 years in college? I would say the first 2 years were kind of tough, because what made the first 2 years tough is just everything is completely new. That's what I think to make the first 2 years of engineering tough. You're just all everything's kind of new to you, this whole college environment. And then once those 2 years are passed, you get a lot more used to what it's like to start a new class, syllabus, whatever, all that stuff. And then once you get your internships, you start to get a hang of things. So in terms of the classwork though, within engineering, I would say the junior year's probably the hardest year for a lot of students. Mainly, and why is because you're past those first 2 years, which pretty much all the engineerings take the same classes. So whether you're in mechanical, electrical, chemical, more than likely you're all taking Calc 1 through 4. You're taking Physics 1, Physics 2. A lot of the classes are similar between all of the majors. And so when you finish that, you're then taking your engineering discipline's core classes. So after all those basic ones are done, you then are taking the classes that are unique to electrical engineering or chemical or mechanical. But you're not at the point where you're necessarily taking electives, because then once you take those core classes, maybe then you're eligible to take some of the more elective based classes, and those are ones that maybe align better with your interests. So I don't know. This is my take. A lot of students find junior year to be pretty tough. Yeah, I can make some YouTube videos. You can subscribe. Check out YouTube. Destination Internship on YouTube. Subscribe there. I do have a video. And it's like 15 minutes, I think, on how I got my SpaceX internship on YouTube. So you can check that out if you're interested. Um, didn't feel like you had hands-on experience until capstone. Yeah. So senior design is where a lot of students will get like hands-on experience. Um, ba, ba, ba. Yes, go Cats. Electrical, mechanical, or mechatronics. Ooh, that's tough. So if you study electrical, I can for sure tell you that you'll get a variety of different stuff you'll learn. You'll learn like power, you'll learn electronics, you'll learn EMAG, that's electromagnetics, probably one of the hardest classes in electrical engineering, signal processing, right? So you'll be exposed to a lot embedded systems, right? Logic. You'll be exposed to a lot of different stuff within electrical engineering, and some of it may not totally interest you based on the rest of your comment if you're seemingly interested in mechatronics. So that said, one thing I would recommend if you're trying to determine what major you should study, simple exercise. Compare say you're stuck between two majors, right? Compare the curriculums for the different majors side by side, and then just from top to bottom, find and just check off. Okay, interested? Yay, nay, yay, nay. Which classes are you interested in? Which classes are you not? And at the end of the exercise, you'll probably see that maybe one major has significantly more classes that interest you than the other one. So that's a simple exercise to help you possibly choose a major. Like I take a lot of schools have the curriculum posted up online. Find the curriculum, print it out. Find the curriculum for, say, mechanical, print it out, and put that right next to the printout for the electrical, and just from top to bottom, put a check mark or an X next to each one, and just count up the total number of check marks, the good classes that you think you'd like. And then at the end, you'll see, okay, this major seems to have a lot more of what I'm interested in than the other major. And maybe it's not going to be the perfect test, but it might be a tool to help you decide which major to choose. That said, there's a lot of other factors like how well does the major kind of align with my goals and overall interests. Should you major in mechanical and minor in civil? Do you want to go into construction or like buildings or facilities? I would say it depends. My minor when I was minoring, or when I was in school, my major electrical engineering, right, and with a minor in business. I get the Matt Damon comment sometimes. You're an EE, but couldn't find an EE internship, but I got a process engineering internship. Should I do it? I would say in most cases, like any internship is better than no internship. And so like for me, for example, I can break down kind of what my internships were. So the first internship I worked was at John Deere, and that was the official title was like manufacturing engineering intern. I did a little bit. The work was a little bit more like electronics related, and it related a little bit more to manufacturing. The next internship was this co-op at ExxonMobil, and that was more like instrumentation and controls. And then next experience internship was at Tesla, and that was a co-op, and that was more power related. Next, and facilities. Next was Johnson and Johnson, and that was a co-op, and that actually was not engineering. That was supply chain. And then the next internship was SpaceX. That was a summer internship, and that was a little bit more power related / facilities ish focused. How do I feel about biomedical? I think biomedical is interesting. What I would say though is that it could be a little bit narrow of a major. So maybe it's a little bit more narrow of a major than something like mechanical. I would say that you probably would, if you were to look at the jobs filled by biomedical majors, they probably could also be filled by maybe mechanical, and maybe in some cases, depending on the role, electrical. So what I would say is that it definitely, if like you're interested in healthcare or like medical devices, things like that, it could be a good major. But you also want to be cautious that you're not like narrowing yourself down or pigeonholing yourself down into a specific industry. But that said, over time, once you're working, generally, what you'll find is like some skills are transferable, and it might not be that um, narrow you down into a single industry as much as when you're first starting out. As an EE student finishing their first year and looking to get an internship, how would you find or apply? So what I can do is I can just share how I got my internships. Basically, it was either through on-campus career fairs, which is my favorite way to suggest students find internships. So on-campus career fairs, networking, or applying online. Your neighbor's son is graduated EE, but now going to med school. Yeah, med school, or not, EE is definitely a very versatile major. Your little brother wants to make roller coasters. He's 13. Um, any advice? What I would say is mechanical engineering might be an interesting choice. Possibly civil. I think that I would say when it comes to roller coasters, I'm not exactly sure, but I would imagine that when you're looking at like theme parks and stuff like that, I'm not exactly sure, don't quote me on it, but I would imagine how it works is there's like consulting firms that build roller coasters. So I would imagine that if you go to any of like the major engineering consulting firms, they probably have departments that design roller coasters. I would imagine that's the case. If I were to make a bet on it, that's probably what I would think how it works. I know, of course, there's probably like in-house teams too for like theme park companies, but I think that's the first thing that comes to mind. But I'm not too familiar with that. How did I get my first internship? Yeah, so I had just shared the ways, but my first internship I got through. So I had two internships freshman year. The first offer I received, I ended up not accepting and working, but that was through an on-campus career fair. And then the second offer, the one I ended up working, was through applying online. So I got the John Deere internship through applying online. I did not work any internship in high school. How hard is it for engineers to go into management? So I would say I would say like it's just kind of like a path at a lot of companies. So as you move up, if you're working with an industry, you're sort of confronted with the path of either going more technical or going into more management route. So it's not too complicated, to be honest. It's just the path kind of presents itself, and you choose how you develop and where you go once you're employed and working. Got your first internship at the last minute. Nice. You got an engineering internship as a nursing major because you used to be an engineering major. Um, I don't. If you study engineering, or if you, I'm confused. Do you study nursing, but you got an engineering internship? Do they know that you study nursing? Do they know you study nursing? Um, I don't know if that aligns well with like your major. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Civil engineering or architecture? I would say it depends on your interests and your goals. I would 100% depends on what kind of aligns well with your goals. To take in something like that, I try to do is so like when I give advice, I want to give like something that's super practical and related to the end result of what you may be doing. So, like if you ask, should I do mechanical or electrical? Well, I would say take a look at Physics 1 and Physics 2. Which physics did you like more? If you liked Physics 2 and you think that topics in that are interesting, then you may find electrical more interesting, right? But so in this case, civil engineering or architecture, something you could do is go online, look up like entry level architecture roles, right? And then look up entry level civil engineering roles, and literally just look at the responsibilities and see which have responsibilities that align well with your interests, that you think are just more interesting, and that can help. That it's not the perfect way to decide, but that could sort of help you decide. Just another tool in the toolbox to help make a choice. Thank you for the rose. What I would say too is if you're like if you study something like mechanical or electrical, let's use electrical. You study electrical and you don't know if you should go into like controls or if you should go into signal processing. Go online, look up entry level digital signal processing engineer. Try to find jobs with that general wording. Read the job description and then look up entry level controls engineer, entry level instrumentation engineer, right? Read the responsibilities, read the job description, and then just compare. That can help you decide what specialty might interest you the most. Now that said, is it the perfect exercise? Not necessarily, but can it help? Probably. So I already talked about how I got the internships. Um, ba- ba- ba. Advice for landing the first internship or co-op. What I would say is that it's important you just get some type of experience on your resume. So that could be getting involved on campus, clubs and student organizations. It doesn't necessarily have to be technical, but if it's technical, that's helpful. Research on campus could be helpful. If there's any sort of volunteer work or leadership type work you could do on campus, it's another idea. It's telling me the live will end. We've detected inactivity during your current live. Complete the verification to continue your current live. And it's giving me a little puzzle I have to solve. So let me solve the puzzle. Or I have to line up the puzzle piece. Okay, perfect. I'm back. Advice for landing. Yeah. So I'm just spitballing different ideas here. If you have, part-time work experience, a part-time job that you work or worked in the past, that can go on your resume. You might think, well, it doesn't relate to what I want to do technically. Put it on the resume. It's going to show employers that you used your time productively. It still shows skills and experiences, and I'll give you a example in a second. So, for example, if you work at the school's rec center, you work at the front desk there, right? That could go on your resume. You work at the library, that could go on the resume. For me, when I had my first internship, you could even look at like high school experiences too, if you're like in your freshman or sophomore year, and if you have the space on your resume that you have to fill, you can fill it with one or two high school experiences. So when I got my first internship, if I recall correctly, I had like my job at a part-time job from the summer at a grocery store. I had a project from high school. I had a club from high school on my resume. So multiple high school experiences on my resume. And even when even when I had on my resume John Deere internship and the Exxon co-op, and I was getting offers from SpaceX and Tesla, I still had an award that I received during high school on my resume. So don't be totally afraid of pulling one or two experiences from high school and putting that on your resume if you still have space and need to fill it. But what you ideally are doing is activities in college that are what I call recent and relevant, and then you can use to fill in your resume. Let's see. Industrial engineering major, very lost as to what you're eligible. And yes, this is live. Again, I'm like 99 messages behind. Over 99 messages. It doesn't tell me exactly how many. It's about 12:50 p.m. Friday, May 30th. So yes, this is live. Industrial engineering, lost as to what you should do. So industrial engineering can do a lot. You can go into like manufacturing, supply chain, management consulting tends to take a lot of IEs tend to go there. So I would look into like supply chain or manufacturing roles. Those tend to be filled by industrial engineering students. Junior year is the hardest year. I would say junior year tends to be the hardest year. Student assistant positions. Are you talking about like research assistant positions? Those aren't the easiest to get. They definitely can be tough to get. And if you're like looking within your school, I don't know if I would say harder than internships, but they can still be pretty tough. Between EE and Chemi, worried about location for Chemi. I'm afraid EE is too hard advice. So I can tell you that a lot of people, if you were to ask them what the hardest, if you were to go to any engineering school and poll all of the engineering students and they were to ask what's the hardest engineering, most schools would have either the winner would be either chemical or electrical. So at a lot of the time, if you were to just go online and you were to find like polls that people run online, or you were to just see opinions, most of the time I would bet you see either chemical or electrical as the hardest. So that said, chemical is definitely not the easiest major. But you're worried about location for chemi. So I would imagine that when you say that, you're thinking a lot of chemical plants tend to be in like lower population towns, not like in cities. And like if you want to like live in a big city or something, you may not find many chemical roles. So the point I would say is that chemical engineering, again, it's a diverse field. You can find roles. There's lots of different opportunities for chemical engineering all over the place. Like I said, way earlier in the live, I think if you look at the major engineerings like electrical, mechanical, chemical, they're all like almost every industry I feel has a need for those. So again, you can go into a lot of different industries with it. What engineering salary? What are you asking? Which one? I'm confused at this question. Was it difficult to get the first internship? Yeah, I would say the first internship is probably the most difficult one to get. Going to UK in the fall. Awesome. What did I do during undergrad to get the internships? Yeah, so I have a video on YouTube. It's like 15 minutes long about how I got my SpaceX internship. But basically how I got the internships, career fairs on campus, networking, applying online. Those are the 3 ways. In terms of what was on my resume, to start, I feel like I already talked about like the first one. I had a few experiences from like when I was in high school. I had a research experience on campus. Later on, I worked as an undergraduate teaching assistant. So that was something later on I eventually had on my resume. Eventually had like a peer mentorship role that was on my resume. That was like a no, it wasn't a volunteer position. That was something on my resume. What else? I helped start a club on campus. That was on my resume. So different types of involvement. But over time, what I think really helps is the previous internship experience. Previous internship experience is like the gold standard. So, for example, once I had multiple internships under my belt, eventually what happened. So, think about it like this. If you're involved in a club on campus, you might have a section on your resume for that involvement, right? You might have it written out, and then you may have 3 bullet points underneath talking about what you do, like 2 or 3 bullet points. Eventually, when I had the multiple internships on my resume, it got to a point where all I did was list the name of the club on my resume, and there wasn't even any really much explanation for what that club was or what I did, because at that point, the internship experience dominated on my resume, because internship experience is most related in many cases to industry and what you'll be doing in industry. So that's just a personal anecdote. And yes, this is live. It's all about, oh, not about, it's 12:56. It is 12:56 Central Time, Friday, May 30th. All right, I do have to jump. Oops. Well, I'm trying to scroll through the questions. It is getting pretty late. I've been on. I'm at an hour 4 minutes, so it's been. I feel like I'm kind of losing my voice now. But if I didn't get to your question, I do appreciate all the questions. Go to like one of my recent videos. What's the one I got? The go to the video about the 4+1 masters. I don't know, and leave a comment there, and I can try, and then I can always go back and reference what your question was, and maybe make a video about it, or reply back there, or any of my other videos. Just go there, leave a comment, and I'll see it, and then it'll be on the top of my mind, and I'll hopefully be able to make a video about it or reply back there. I do my best to try to reply to comments and DMs. It does get a little bit there tends to be a lot, so it's I do feel like I fall behind every day, but I try my best. I'm actually today planning on going back to some of the older ones from older comments from a couple days ago and replying to those. So I do got to jump right now. It is getting late. Been on live for about an hour. But if I didn't get to your question, feel free to go back to one of my older videos, older posts, and leave a comment there. I appreciate it. Hope everybody has a good rest of the day. And yes, this was live, not pre-recorded. It's about 12:58 p.m. Central Time, Friday, May 30th.